What's going on, and welcome to the NBA DFS Q&A show. My name is Tom Vecchio. I'm here every Wednesday at 4 p.m. taking your questions about the night's slate. As always, you can find this on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Facebook pages. You can follow me on Twitter at DFS_Tom. Let's hop right in. We have a loaded slate. We don't have too many injuries to worry about. We already have some questions waiting, so let's jump right in. Starting off, Born to Laugh is asking, any objection to playing Vic Krejci or Keon Johnson, or should I try and save up for Cam Payne? So we're talking about players that are slightly apart in salary. The first two, Johnson and Krejci, are down at $3,500, $3,600 for those two players. So if you can, if you're going with the stars and scrubs build, I prefer Johnson over Krejci, but realistically, you want to be getting up to Cam Payne. And he's kind of one of my core value plays on tonight's slate. He's going to be super popular in all formats. That's really a spot that you should be going. Of course, Chris Paul is out. Devin Booker was ruled out earlier today. So I think if you can find that extra $500-$600 to get up to Cam Payne, that's really what you want to be doing. But I do prefer Johnson over Krejci among those two. Also, the next question from Born to Laugh is, start Lauri Markkanen or Brandon Ingram? So this question is, this is an interesting question because they're a little bit far apart in salary. Lauri Markkanen's $5,500 while Brandon Ingram is $76. So we're talking about players that are, it's not like a natural pivot. It's not like you're choosing one or the other. It's like, okay, if you choose Markkanen, what are you doing with that extra, $2,000 of salary? So I prefer Ingram, who's in a game with, a very solid over-under. We're talking 233.5. This is the highest on the slate. So I would prefer, getting up to Brandon Ingram, but it's like, what are you doing when the lineup changes with the $2,000, of salary differential? It's not just like a direct swap from one to the other. So I prefer Ingram. Out of those two, I think he has a higher ceiling, better usage, better game environment, those sorts of things. Grim on YouTube's asking, start Isaiah Roby or Isaiah Jackson? Now, this is a close question. It, comes down to a lot of potentially what who you're prioritizing, what types of game environments you are prioritizing. I think Isaiah Jackson is fine. He's been, consistent option for the most part for the Pacers just because, their rotation has changed. Sabonis moving on to the Kings, et cetera, et cetera. I think Roby is also a solid option as well. I prefer Roby just because his minutes are going to be, super solid, despite this being a blowout, because the Thunder are a little bit shorthanded. So in that toss-up of the Isaiahs, I prefer Jackson over Roby. Grim is also asking Tyrese Maxey or Darius Garland. So technically, Darius Garland is still listed as questionable. We would just have to get confirmation on that. I prefer Garland ahead of Maxey. Travis Porter on YouTube's asking, take McCollum or Donovan Mitchell. So this is, a close matchup in terms of the salary for the two players. I personally prefer CJ McCollum tonight. For the Utah Jazz, we're dealing with a 15-point spread now, right? Like this, I think it opened up at 12.5 or 13 last night. It jumped up to 15 points. Like we're talking about some, pretty serious blowout potential in this game where Donovan Mitchell and the Jazz could probably cruise through the first three quarters, and him not playing a whole lot or at all in the fourth quarter is a real possibility in this matchup. And that's what I'm ultimately worried about for some of the games on tonight's slate. Like I'm worried about Jokic tonight. I'm worried about Donovan Mitchell. So I am leaning towards McCollum 10 times out of 10 in that matchup. I will say I already took McCollum 4+ made threes tonight. That's one of the three bets I have. I'm shooting for some big plus money. He's been looking really solid for the Pelicans. So I'm leaning McCollum in that 1-to-1, 10 times out of 10. McCollum's been hot, from downtown. We know he gets up plenty of threes. This game environment overall is super, super favorable. Sacramento, terrible on defense. They're also a very fast-paced team, and we do see the Pelicans playing up in pace. So McCollum 4+ threes is one of the bets that I made. I also took the Cavs -3.5. The line moved a little bit. It's at 4 now. I got the Cavs a little bit earlier this morning. And then I took Cam Johnson for the Suns, the over on his points, rebounds, and assists. I think it's sitting at 25.5 or 26.5, whatever it is. It's down to 24.5 now. So I think I got a 25.5. So I like Cam Johnson overall, kind of just like his game. I think that the extra usage will be there for him with Devin Booker ruled out, a player that we know can put up 20-plus real points in some of these recent matchups. So Cam Johnson, small forward, he's getting up some points recently, and that's great to see. Getting up the shot volume, no Chris Paul and no Devin Booker now. So I like the over on Cam Johnson, points, rebounds, assists tonight. DJ's asking, Herb Jones worth a look tonight or go with Bojan Bogdanovic? Herb Jones really isn't my favorite player to go with just because of his lower usage rate overall. Bogdanovic, this is a player that we know can get this is a small sample size, so you have to take the 1.14 with a bit of a grain of salt. If we look at the season overall, Herb Jones can be a bit, his consistency isn't always there. We see him fluctuating a little bit. That's why he's, well under one FanDuel point per inning at 0.77 and a low usage rate. So I'm not super in favor of Herb Jones on most nights. So Bogdanovic has a super soft matchup and a player that could put up 20 plus points based on threes, by halftime almost versus the Rockets. So at that lower tier, mid-tier, at the forward position, I would take Bogdanovic. Jared Allen or Gobert at center tonight. I would go with Allen. What I said about Donovan Mitchell, kind of along the same lines as Jokic, a little bit along the same lines as Embiid and Harden. There's some real blowout factor in these games. And we look to the matchup at center tonight for Allen versus Charlotte. They're terrible. They're the third worst team against center. So we want to be actively attacking it. This game has a 218 over-under? All right, 218.5 over-under, 4-point spread. It's also a massive pace-up spot for Cleveland. They're 29th in the league in pace while Charlotte's sitting up at 1. So I'm taking Allen in that matchup over Gobert. DJ is asking Kevin Porter, Jalen Suggs, Evan Fournier, or Mike Conley start 2. So Kevin Porter, he's listed as questionable still? He's probable now. Okay, so Kevin Porter listed as probable. I think that's always a fine option. It's Suggs, Fournier, or Mike Conley. So Mike Conley would definitely be last for me on that list. I would take Suggs. I would take Porter and Suggs ahead of Fournier. We know Fournier can get hot from downtown sometimes for the Knicks, but his overall usage is just not something that I love going to. We could realistically get maybe 50 points a lot from Fournier, but 30, 35 points from him is certainly within the range of outcomes, but also getting 20 or 22 is viable for Fournier, and that's not something that helps you in any capacity. I would take Porter and Suggs as the top 2. So we're dealing with these higher spreads, right? In 1, 2, 3. This game's okay. I think we still can look to campaign, pretty comfortably. Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, pretty comfortably, but 14.5, 15, and 10.5 are pretty big spreads with these two leading the way. Realistically, when it comes to Jokic on tonight's slate, I don't have a whole lot of interest in him. He's $11,000. If we look at some of these recent game logs, this is probably a realistic outcome for him tonight, playing, less than 30 minutes, but he still could put up, 45 to 55 FanDuel points. And, at that rate, he's not really reaching fantasy value. We could see the Denver Nuggets win this game wire to wire against the Thunder. I don't think anyone's going to be surprised if that happens, but Jokic wouldn't reach value at that point. Same thing about Embiid, somewhat along the same lines as Harden. If I have to choose among these top options, it would be going to Harden to spend that amount of salary. And I guess I would prefer Embiid over Jokic. Android on Facebook is asking, who do you prefer between Bam and Jimmy Butler? Bam and Jimmy Butler just straight up. Oh, Jimmy Butler has been a little bit slow this side of the All-Star break. It's consistent, but it's not super high production. I will say I really do like Jimmy Butler tonight based on his salary and based on the game environment overall. If I have to choose between them, I might take Bam because I think he's going to be less popular compared to Jimmy. I think Jimmy's going to be pretty popular tonight, just given his salary at only $8,400. So I would take Bam up at $9,900 because I think Sabonis should be a little bit more popular than him just because that game environment is super strong and the matchup against the Pelicans is easy. So I'd just be shooting for the tournament aspect. That's the way I normally view things. Which player is going to be least popular and has a similar projection. So it would be Bam in that case. So tonight's slate, you want to be focusing in on players that we know have, locked in usage or extra usage, like a player like Cam Payne. This is really where I'm starting off, a lot of core this core group of value plays. I don't think that's going to be a surprise for anyone to see a lot of these players very popular. Drew Eubanks, the one thing I'll say about him for Portland, he has center power forward eligibility. So if you are looking to play Embiid or Jokic or Valanciunas or any player that has center only eligibility, or DeAndre Ayton, make sure to select Eubanks as a power forward in the optimizer for using one, because you don't want to block the center position. So that's one thing, I'm making sure to do. If you're rostering, Eubanks, Sabonis, Adebayo, whoever it might be, and they have multi-position eligibility, that won't be an issue. Dre's asking RJ Barrett or Brandon Ingram. I'm taking Brandon Ingram in that matchup. I love this game overall. This is probably one of my favorite games on the entire slate. I think a lot of people are going to be going to Indiana and Orlando. A lot of the options on the Cavs, because Charlotte's not playing any defense this year. It's also a huge pace-up spot. We should see some of the options in this game be popular. But, Sacramento and New Orleans with a 233.5 over-under. It's a 6.5-point spread. Like, that's close enough. And no defense from the Sacramento side of things is just a matchup we love to attack night in and night out. We get consistency from Ingram, McCollum, Valanciunas. All of those are in play. Andrew's asking thoughts on Trey Lyles tonight, given he starts. Yeah, so Lyles is kind of in my core along the assumption that he will be starting, as he did the other night against OKC. $3,600 if he's going to be out there seeing 30-plus minutes. Like, this is kind of where I'm starting off a lot of my builds. I want to be going to Antetokounmpo. I think realistically, Antetokounmpo is in the game versus the Heat with a 4-point spread, that among the players at the top tier, when we're comparing him to just the salary overall for, the players that all the way up to the top, like, he's in the game that's probably going to stay the closest. There's blowout factor for Jokic, Embiid, and Harden. So why would we be looking to spend the salary there when we can spend it on Antetokounmpo? So I'm big on Antetokounmpo tonight. I'm big on CJ McCollum. As I said, I already took him 4+ made threes. I find myself going back to Jimmy Butler. Like I said, I really like his salary. And this leaves you with great value options. Vincent, Payne, given that Trey Lyles starts, as Andrew is referring to. That's what we're kind of, hoping for. We go for a stars and scrubs build. Drew Eubanks, we know, should be in the starting lineup. And then this leaves you flexibility. If you want to go to 8 you want to try and jam in another, top tier point guard, it leaves you that flexibility. So as I've said before on this show, I kind of, narrow down my value pool, and then I prioritize the players at the top tier. So I'm prioritizing Antetokounmpo over Jokic, over Embiid. I want plenty of CJ McCollum, Halliburton, going to Jimmy Butler, like these really, really consistent options that are in these closer spread games compared to spending up for players, that are in these higher spread games. Grim is asking any 3x2s you take the Heat spread. So let's look at some 3x2. So the Heat, the Heat are the number one seed in the East. This is obviously a very close matchup. I kind of like the Heat 4.5. If it gets a little bit lower, I probably wouldn't go there, but I would certainly take the Heat before I take the Bucks. We know that they're struggling a little bit on defense. 3x2s for tonight. So this obviously has a lot of juice. I would say the Rockets and the Jazz, that'd be a good spot. The Kings and the Pelicans, McCollum could certainly get it done. De'Aaron Fox, if he gets hot from 3, that's certainly a viability. And then the Suns, like these would be my top 3, because Anthony Simons, Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, Cam Johnson. So I would say Rockets, Jazz, if you're using it potentially in a parlay, like you don't want to be paying like the 160, the 164 juice is a little bit too much. But if I have to choose one, it'd probably be Blazers, Suns, get that plus money a little bit, or look to add those in a parlay. And the Charlotte spread, I'm actually on the Cavs. That's one of my 3 bets I made today. So I'm on the Cavs. If you want to go to the Hornets, that's fine. I already have the Cavs -3.5. I have Cam Johnson over 25.5 points, rebounds, assists, and I have CJ McCollum plus 4+ made threes sitting at was it plus 200 or plus 192 right now? I think it was plus 198 or plus 200 before. Thoughts on Miles Bridges, 7,100 for Charlotte. Going to him tonight. Yeah, 7,100. The defensive matchup isn't the best in the world going up against Cleveland. We also see it as a large pace down spot for Charlotte. they play super fast, all the way down to Cleveland, who plays super slow, is pretty solid on defense. If he's not going to be popular for that reason, he makes a viable option at small forward. I will say, at least in some of the initial kind of roster builds throughout the optimizer, I see myself taking Middleton and O'Shea Brissett a lot more often, and even Tyler Hero over Miles Bridges, simply due to their game environments being closer. Not that Charlotte, Cleveland isn't close. I just don't like the pace down spot, and the better defense on the Cleveland side of things. DJ's asking, do I like Jackson Hayes tonight for the Pelicans? Coming in at a modest salary overall, $4,900. I think he's fine tonight. He is in the initial player pool, but just based on the lineups that I've been building, I like the savings a little bit more with Lyles and Eubanks. This is not to say I don't like Jackson Hayes tonight. I think he's totally viable tonight. As I've said, this is probably my favorite game environment overall on the slate. So yes, Hayes is in play for me tonight. It just depends on where else I'm trying to find the savings. And realistically, I mean, 36, 3,900. So swapping in Hayes for one of those two players really doesn't do a whole lot. It doesn't change that much when it comes to your lineup build. You can still go to Antetokounmpo. You could still get to small forward. You could still get to Butler. You could still get to CJ McCollum, and you have plenty of salary left. So yes, I like Hayes tonight. It's just a little bit more savings always helps when you're really trying to jam in a few top tier stars. So the injury news on tonight's slate, really the main one that I'm concerned about would be Garland. Is he actually going to play? He went through shoot around this morning. He's missed a couple games for the Cavaliers. Those are Thursday games, nothing important. So Garland's really the one that I'm mainly worried about. These other players are probable, which is always good for them. If Cole Anthony magically doesn't play, which there's no indication that he won't, I guess this could open up more minutes for Markelle Fultz, who we know played 16 minutes or just shy of 16 minutes in his first game back. He was productive in that time. So maybe the rotational minutes, and it's not going to be a surprise to see Markelle Fultz just see more minutes overall. Grim is asking the classic Wednesday question, who's your sixth man tonight? This is a question I've been asked a few times for anyone who hasn't heard it before. It's who's that player that's not going to be in the starting lineup? Who's going to be in a spot to produce? Who's going to be the player that's going to be a bit overlooked, under the radar, whatever you want to call it. Who's that sixth man tonight? Obviously, Tyler Hero, a player that is probably going to win the sixth man of the year, is always a viable option. I specifically like Hero tonight because of the matchup against the Bucks. It's a close spread, high over under, all of those sorts of things. But the Bucks, they are dead last in the league for the most three-pointers allowed per game to their opponents. What is Tyler Hero really great at? Hitting three-pointers. So when he comes off the bench and he's running the offense with no Jimmy Butler out there, no Bam Adebayo, whatever the court may look like at the time, Hero is in a phenomenal matchup to knock down multiple threes tonight. So Hero would be number one for me right off the bat. I would then say, Devontae Graham's in a great game environment. You could always look there. Emmanuel Quickley can always get hot for the Knicks, but it might actually be Markelle Fultz. He's going to continuously play more and more minutes. And then Kevin Love. Kevin Love is always in the mix. So it's going to be Tyler Hero, Kevin Love, Markelle Fultz. Hopefully his minutes will increase. And then Devontae Graham. We want to be taking players that have offensive usage when they do come on the court, and some of those starters come off the court. Andrew on Facebook is saying, I find myself getting a lot of Malcolm Brogdon tonight. He looked great, and I feel this may be a shootout. Any worries about any restrictions? Yeah, so Brogdon has obviously been dealing with a ton of injuries this season, and that's a concern because a cap of 30 minutes is realistic for him, even though, like you said, he did look great in these first two games this side of the All-Star break. He's putting up consistent production. Will he push past 35 minutes? That's a concern I think that we all have. Unless there's some definitive update that there's going to be a cap on him, I have no problem going to Brogdon. It's more about who would I be taking him over at the point guard position. I find myself taking Simons ahead of Brogdon 10 times out of 10. There's no one below him in terms of salary that I'd be prioritizing. It'd be mainly taking Simons and maybe Trey Mann, just because of the roster scarcity or the lack of players that the Thunder have right now. Like Trey Mann's going to be in for plenty of minutes. Booker's out. Do you think Mikal Bridges has 20 points tonight? Is that what his prop is sitting at? Let's see. For points, Mikal Bridges, obviously a bit of a 3-and-D guy for the 16.5, a little bit of juice on the over. Bridges, a bit of a 3-and-D guy for them. So Mikal Bridges plus money on over 1.5 made 3. So yeah, I do like Bridges tonight. It's a kind of a toss up between him, Cam Johnson, and Jay Crowder. Like I said, I already took the over on Cam Johnson's points, rebounds, assist prop, but I'm certainly fine with Mikal Bridges. His ability to step out and hit some threes is always there. If he's going to get some extra shot volume with Bridges out, with Booker out, Bridges he could certainly get to 20 points. Alexei Pokusevski for 6-man or no, yeah, that's certainly possible. Poku, obviously, again, just due to the lack of players for the Thunder, they have so many players out. Like him going for over 1 FanDuel point per minute, as he's done in some of these recent games, is totally a realistic possibility. It's kind of what we saw from him last year when the Thunder were kind of doing the same thing, where they just had a lack of players. They, calling up a bunch of these young players. Poku is also an option, only 5,200. Really doesn't, break the bank in any capacity. Could go for 30 plus points, 35 points, especially if it turns into a blow. I mean, I would say when it turns into a blowout, this game has a 14, 15 point spread, whatever it is, 14.5 point spread for the Nuggets. Any interest in Cole Anthony, assuming he plays at 5,700? Yeah, I have interest in Cole Anthony. It's not like we're worried too much about the Pacers defense overall, right? This is not 5,700 for Cole Anthony, assuming that he does play, correct? Yeah, we're not worried about the Pacers defense overall, I don't think we have been at any point in the season. His shot volume is something that, we have to kind of latch onto as what we want to be seeing him pushing past. The inconsistency as of late isn't great, but when he does get up to double digits, that's where he really reaches towards the ceiling. The lack of consistency recently when it comes to filling up the stat sheet is what gives him normally a high floor of points, and then the shot volume gives him a nice ceiling. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with Cole Anthony tonight. It's a 1-possession game with a solid over-under going up against the Pacers. Like, there's nothing wrong with basically any player in that game. In Sacramento, New Orleans, in Milwaukee, Miami, maybe outside of Grayson Allen or Duncan Robinson. Andrew saying, with it being a back-to-back, a higher chance of a blowout. Thoughts on G League Beast Alperen Sengun? Yeah, Sengun has been super solid for the Rockets, at least when he sees playing time. Obviously, one of their younger players that they're trying to get into the mix a bit more. It comes down to his minutes. If we're going to be seeing 20-plus minutes for him, this is a player that we've known to step into starting lineup, especially when Christian Wood is out, and produce plenty of fantasy points, be an awesome value play at a point per dollar basis. Him seeing only 16 or 18 minutes is also a viable outcome. If you want to take some tournament shots with him, this is probably one of the players I'd be most comfortable with going to. That's an off-the-bench player that is highly variable, but like you're shooting for that upside. Like this would be a tournament-only play. Andrew on Facebook is asking, like, you're shooting for that upside. Like, you're not looking for consistency because he's not in the starting lineup, and you're working that blowout angle for this game. So Sengun would fit the mold, a player that they like to get involved into the offense when he's out there. So totally a viable option for tournaments. Like, you are taking on the risk, but that's what you have to go for when it comes to tournaments. That's, I only play tournaments, so I'm totally on board with that for Alperen Sengun. Yeah, he has been a beast as in the G League. When he gets in the starting lineup, he's a player that can push past 30, 40 FanDuel points plenty of times. So again, you want to be focusing in on your, a tight core of value plays. You don't want to be expanding your player pool. You can't play everyone on the slate. You want to be focusing in on the top tier of stars. As I said, I am going to Antetokounmpo ahead of Jokic and Embiid when it comes to the high dollar spend. The spreads in some of these games are very concerning. Meanwhile, Miami, Milwaukee, this ending as a 1-possession game, being super close, high scoring, Antetokounmpo going towards a triple-double, like that's a very, very realistic outcome. So I'm prioritizing Antetokounmpo, Jimmy Butler, a lot of CJ McCollum. He's one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. Halliburton, those sorts of players. Upper on YouTube is saying, what's your opinion on Vit Krejci and is Garland playing tonight? So Garland is still listed as questionable. That's something we need to officially get clarity on, because if he's not going to be in there, I guess I haven't specifically touched on if Garland misses. If Garland misses, it's going to be Brandon Goodwin again for the starting point guard for the Cavaliers. Big production out of Goodwin when he's in the starting lineup. Heavy minutes for him. So, is Garland playing tonight? That's to be determined. We all have to wait on that news. But if he's out, go to Brandon Goodwin as a very, very solid value option. Vit Krejci for OKC, he's okay. In the grand scheme of things, I think he's okay. If you were really trying to take the value at point guard, that's fine. I would really, really try to find the extra salary from 3,500 to get up to 4,100 to get to campaign. That's what I would realistically or ideally, want you to do is get up to campaign, who we know is going to be super popular tonight, should be in the starting lineup. No Chris Paul, no Devin Booker, et cetera, et cetera. No matter where you look tonight in any lineup, you're going to see campaign so popular. So I would say try and find the $500-$600 to get up to campaign tonight. That's the best outcome. And is Garland playing tonight? We all have to wait on that news. I would certainly like Garland to play. Again, I do have the Cavs -3.5. Them -3.5. Cam Johnson over 25.5 points, rebounds, assists. And CJ McCollum for 4+ made threes, going for some big plus money tonight. Want to get that in. He's been shooting the ball well for the Pelicans. We know they brought him there for a reason. High over-under, weak defense in Sacramento, all those sorts of things. How about Vincent tonight? Going to be through the roof. Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. I like Gabe Vincent tonight. This is a player that, he's one of my core value plays. He's been solid for them with Kyle Lowry out. I think you can continue to look to him for some really solid point per dollar value. He's only $4,000. I brought this up. These were, or I should say that these four were my kind of the core of the value that I really want to be going to tonight. So Vincent is absolutely one of my favorite value plays on tonight's slate. Him, campaign, Trey Lyles, Drew Eubanks, making sure to select Drew Eubanks as a power forward only because he does have dual position eligibility. You don't want to be blocking yourself at the center position. If you're trying to play Bam Adebayo, Sabonis, Valanciunas, whoever it might be, Jared Allen, someone asked about him before. Love the matchup for Jared Allen because Charlotte, they don't play defense. Sacramento, they don't play defense against center. So I'm, getting to Valanciunas, getting to Jared Allen. So I'm not blocking myself with Drew Eubanks. Make sure he's selected as a power forward only. So really the only injury news on tonight's slate is going to be Garland. Get some clarity on if he's going to be playing. If he's not, go to Goodwin at point guard. I would say limit your exposure to Jokic, Embiid, Harden. These are very, very high over-under spreads. Thoughts on Mo Bamba? He allows you to load up on other core players. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with this game overall, as I said, between the Pacers and the Magic. It's a one-possession game with a 233 over-under. We look to the Magic, and everyone in their lineup is being productive. Let's get up their points per minute real quick. Mo Bamba was the second most productive player among the starting five for the Magic at 0.96, and he gets it done on a low usage rate. So absolutely nothing wrong with Mo Bamba tonight. A player that, steps out and takes some threes every once in a while, which is, of course, nice to see for a big man, giving him some nice ceiling to reach for. Piles in plenty of rebounds, could go for a double-double. Is affordable tonight at $4,600. So Pacers, Magic, Cavaliers, Pelicans, Kings, Bucks, Heat, plenty of options from the Suns with Booker out, getting to Anthony Simons, Josh Hart, Drew Eubanks, whoever it might be. We have a very solid mid-tier of players tonight that aren't super expensive, that all have great usage rates, great game environments, great salaries, et cetera, et cetera. It really should be a very, very, I think, a high-scoring slate tonight, which will be good for fantasy. All right, so that does it for today's show. I'll be back next Wednesday, same time, 4 p.m. right here on the FanDuel, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter pages. You can follow me on Twitter at DFS_Tom. Until next time, good luck in your contests.